Hello everyone, and welcome to The Fields. I'd like to thank our sponsor this episode, Robust Cannabis. Robust Cannabis has handcrafted flower distinctly unique from others. They cultivate organically, using living soil in a state-of-the-art, pressure-positive greenhouse. With strains like Grape Frosé Pie, California Raisins No. 1, 2, and 3, and Finish Frost, Robust has some of the most unique cultivars on the scene. Find Robust in your neighborhood dispensary. Proud to be from Missouri. Proud to cultivate in Missouri. Most importantly, Robust is proud to serve the people of Missouri. Natural, organic, sustainable. That's Robust. My guest today is the owner and sole proprietor, the one-man band of Handwraps rolling papers, Justin Bricker.
Jeff, my man. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
I feel like this is part two.
It is kind of part two. For everybody out there watching, we had a really nice conversation the other day when he came down to the dispensary. We just randomly talked for 20 minutes in the waiting area, and I think it sort of serves as a nice backbone for what this episode is going to be about. But let's start out, because I don't think I asked you this. Who taught you how to roll your first joint? Was it yourself?
Actually, no. It was a bunch of trial and error. A good buddy of mine, still my best friend to this day. His name's Brian. He lives up in Kansas City. Shout out to my best friend Brian. There was actually a time we sat in the parking lot of this old little rundown bar in O'Fallon, like kind of way off in the backwoods, and we sat there for 30, 40 minutes. And just rolling and rolling, trying to roll and roll, and I couldn't get it. I couldn't get it at all to save my life. And finally I gave up. You know, he took me home, and maybe 3 hours that weekend I spent just in my room. My parents were gone, you know, and I just spent rolling, breaking it down, rolling, breaking it down.
What size papers?
Back then, I wasn't even rolling joints yet. First, I was trying to roll blunts. And then I was like, okay, I got that. And then Brian's like, why are we always rolling blunts? He's like, my throat's hurting, blah, 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 blah. And we switched to joints, right? And then I couldn't roll it, so I went back to blunts. And so that's all I smoked forever. And then finally, we went back to, well, I decided, I was like, all right, I can't do this anymore. My lungs are killing me all the time. I'm really going to try and hammer this out. I spent, like I said, 3 hours one night just rolling, breaking it back down, rolling, breaking it back down. And yeah, and ever since then, that's really all I smoke.
And you finally mastered the task.
I would say mastered is a very loose term. I would, till about maybe 6-7 months ago, I thought I rolled a pretty A+ joint. And, you know, there's kids out there, man, that will put me to shame. Don't get me wrong. I think maybe it's A-. It's getting better, but I definitely...
How would you rate your roll?
Right now, definitely an A-. Not an A+, not yet. It's getting there.
Okay.
Because there's people who are professional rollers. Like, that is their job. They get paid, you know, $40,000, $50,000 a year for celebrities. That's all they do is roll their joints.
What a world we live in.
That's what I wanted to do. When I was 18, you know, I saw Snoop Dogg, you know, post, hey, I'm hiring professional blunt roll, you know. So
is that kind of what made you want to start a rolling paper company?
Actually, it was Wiz Khalifa. You know, when I was younger in high school, I was like, oh, I'm gonna be a rapper. I'm gonna smoke with Wiz Khalifa someday. I'm gonna own my own record label, and I might have my own papers. All I wanted to do was smoke with Wiz Khalifa, you know. And he switched from blunts to papers, and I was like, okay, well then I guess I'm gonna switch from blunts to papers too. You know, it was a mixture of like, I'm done just burning my throat all the time, because I mean, we talked about this. There was a point, you know, we were smoking a quarter to a half ounce a day sometimes, and blunts, that's
really rough on the throat.
It's a little rough on the throat, and still it can be rough anyways if you're smoking that much. You know, just being a dumb kid, blowing through all my money and everything.
Not to mention the nicotine.
Absolutely. Well, and that was the reason I solely believe, like, I got, you know, addicted to cigarettes for a long time, is I was smoking blunts, and then somebody was like, oh, I mean, you're smoking blunts, you might as well smoke cigarettes too. It'll get you higher afterwards, you know. In reality, I'm getting a nicotine buzz, and it has nothing to do with getting higher, you know. But after I really switched to joints, you know, it was, like I said, Wiz Khalifa, he was blunts forever, and then he got to deal with raw. and he started pushing their product, and then slowly got his own papers. And you know, I was like, put that on the back burner. Someday I'm gonna do something like that.
But did you switch to raw papers yourself? What were you prior to? Was it blunts to raw?
From blunts to raw immediately. For 10 years, that's all I smoked was raws. You know, for literally the last decade until I started Handwraps. And my one issue was there was never enough papers. You know, I'm someone who's a pretty heavy smoker. Even if I'm still not smoking a quarter to a half ounce a day like I used to, I might smoke sometimes 20, 30 joints a week.
But never enough papers in the sense that there's not enough places to find papers, or the packages that they came in didn't have enough skins in them?
There's not enough papers in each pack. You can get papers anywhere and everywhere. Every gas station has a 99-cent pack of JOB hidden under the sink somewhere, you know. But no, my real issue was I always ran out of papers. And even if especially because I'm smoking with friends, or if I'm smoking by myself, that's all I smoked was joints. For, I want to say 7 years, I didn't have one piece of glass, one hitter, nothing like that in my house. And one day during the pandemic, I'm sitting on the couch in my undies, and now everything is closed. I can't just really go to any gas station or any head shop and get it. And I went to my weed cabinet, and I was out of papers. I was like, you know what? If I had my own papers, I'll never be out of papers. And then I started, you know, kind of thinking about what do I dislike about all the papers that I've purchased over the years, whether it was raw or OCB or Element or any of these. And not to say that
what are some of those things that you disliked about it?
Not enough papers, and none of them came with the tips. I always enjoyed putting filters in my joints, you know, keeps it from completely compressing, you know, it doesn't always, you know, dump particles on you that way. You stop it from, you know, getting clogged up at the end. It's just a simpler process, right? And everyone charges for their tips because they know they can, you know, and I always hated that. So then I find myself tearing off little pieces of paper, random places, or I destroy my box or whatever. And then after a while, when I really started like caring about how I rolled joints and the actual smoking experience, well, then I caved and I started buying tips, you know. And now instead of paying, you know, $2.99 for a pack of papers, now I'm $5 out the door because I'm buying 2 packs of papers and, you know, a pack of tips or whatever, or the pre-rolled tips that are extra, but it's time saving. There's only 28 in there, you know, all this little stuff that, as, you know, a heavy smoker, someone who I consider a craft smoker, like, I just want it all to be here. You know, there's no reason that it shouldn't be, other than that they know they can sell.
So let's talk a little bit about the R&D process. Where do you go to source the paper?
So realistically, I found most of my products from places that I knew where to not get them from, because I'd heard of all these horror stories of people buying bootleg products off of Amazon or off of Chinese websites, and, you know, sourcing their products from places that weren't exactly the manufacturer, right? And the biggest issue I was concerned about was chalks, dyes, and different additives that would be placed inside the papers, you know? And there's a real issue with products being sold on Amazon, specifically raw products, that are counterfeit, right? And I had heard, you know, people were just slapping raw labels on the cheapest packs of papers they can find and selling them for full price, or even technically undercutting raw, selling them for cheaper than they were.
And no one's the wiser.
And no one's the wiser outside of the industry.
So you knew there were these bootleg sites. So where were the sites that weren't bootlegs? Where were the good sources?
So I started finding their competitors, and I realized that most of the competitors that were actually running stringent testing, had COAs and stuff like that, were all in Eastern Europe. And so I did everything I could, one, to try and find something American first. And there's nothing here that I could find that there's American-based companies that are just white labeling. right? Which, by all means, that's how the world goes round. But there were none that are manufacturing here in the States that I could find that had exactly what I need. And so I found a company based out of France and Eastern Europe that had all the best testing that I could ask for: chromium, trace metal testing, no chalks, no dyes, no additives, organic hemp, so I don't have to worry about paper or unbleached paper, any of that nonsense. And
Did you actually have to go to France?
no, so that's going to be hopefully in the middle of next year.
So this is all done over the computer, telephone.
If I guess you could say I'm an international businessman.
Was there a language barrier?
So thankfully, most of the people are used to dealing with English-speaking customers. So it was more of a language barrier over text communication and email than it was by phone. Once we got on the phone and we got the hour situation figured out, and I had to stay up till 2 a.m. a few times and make a couple phone calls here and there. It was good. It all worked itself out.
Okay. What makes those papers different than raw?
At the end of the day, the way I classify papers is there's good papers and there's bad papers. Raw, OCB, all these guys who actually care about the testing product, the testing process, the actual quality of material that goes into their paper, that's what makes a good paper to me, right? What makes these different than raw, because I don't like to say I'm better or, whatever than anyone.
Mm-hmm.
What's different is I'm always going to give you more papers for your value, and it's always going to be from me. You can't buy raw from the owner of raw anymore, right? He's so big now that you have to buy from one of his wholesale companies or their subsidiaries and, stuff like that. Just like we were talking about the other day, you can call the website, the number on the website, and get me all day, every day, and I'll pull up to your store like the pizza man.
But is this something you really want to grow? Do you want to get as big as raw?
I think the rate it's growing right now, I don't have a choice but to keep growing this. Whether I get as big as raw or bigger, that isn't the issue to me, or that isn't the idea or the goal. This is to take this as big as I can and do as much as I can with it. Whatever that ends up being, that's enough for me, because this started off as a side project in my undies in the middle of the pandemic. And now
it's becoming a full-time job, because when we had our first conversation, you said that this was just a part-time thing for you. But I imagine it's growing to the point where you're going to have to say, all right, this is my real career.
I've had to. So my full-time job is I'm a jiu-jitsu coach, by trade. And before that, I was a national accounts manager for a large produce brokerage firm based out of California. I was in charge of 8 states. I had 118 accounts, and I love sales and I love communicating with people and stuff. I just hated what I was doing, and I found myself in, a really bad spot in life, and quit my job and started chasing this dream of, being a full-time professional athlete and whatever, in my mid-20s. And now I'm a full-time jiu-jitsu coach. I'm a matchmaker and a broadcaster and all this other stuff as well. And this just kind of, fell in my lap as a fun idea that I had. And it's to the point now where, like you said, I have to decide whether this is going to be a full-time career or not. And after these last few months, I don't have a choice. I absolutely don't have a choice. The reception and the growth that I've had for only putting, sometimes 10 hours a week into this. And most of that isn't even beating feet, knocking down doors. It's from my phone, because I'm either, I have 2 different academies that I teach at. I have a daughter that I have, 50, sometimes 60% of the time. And, she's 11 years old and she plays her sports. And, I got a beautiful lady at home with me that I'm still trying to balance on how I can take this to the next level and manage all that stuff too.
Let's pivot for a second back to being a jiu-jitsu coach professionally. I imagine you've taken a lot of bumps and bruises in the process.
That'd be to put it lightly. I always tell everyone I'm made out of glass and jelly. Because, I mean, no matter what, I have some sort of like ridiculous injury. I'm not sure if you can tell from the camera. I just had a pretty major hand surgery 3 weeks ago. I had a giant bone tumor and bone spur that I had to have cut out. That was training related.
How has cannabis helped you?
So as far as pain management goes, it's really one of my only tools, and it always has been. But after the surgery, I have terrible adverse effects from anesthesia, and always have. I've had some medical issues that we talked about off camera. That anesthesia, I mean, has wrecks me for usually up to a week afterwards. And for the first time in my adult life, I had to go undergo a procedure that required heavy anesthesia, and for 8 hours afterwards, I was just violently ill. And the first thing I did when I got home after I took a nap, so I woke up, I puked, and then I smoked another joint, or I smoked my first joint, and I didn't puke for the rest of the night. It's the only thing that has cured my nausea from anesthesia instantly. Absolutely instantly. From 8 until 21, I had 2 to 3 surgeries a year every year to remove tumors. And I would be like sick for, 7 to 10 days afterwards from the anesthesia. And like I said, for the first time in my adult life, I was able to actually utilize real medical grade cannabis, not something that I got from the only source possible, and have real benefits from it.
All right. We're going to put your rolling skills to the test, sir. You have a tray of cannabis with some papers there. I'm also going to put my rolling skills to the test. If you wouldn't mind sharing just a touch of cannabis with me.
This here?
Oh, I grab it. So some papers.
I got a regular size for you.
Okay. Oh, excellent. Regular size. Well,
yeah, so I figured that's a little more your speed, eh?
Well, I got to be honest with you, man. I've been practicing with the king size, and I find it has helped me better my roll because I get to spread the cannabis out further. Usually with the 1 1/4, I spill so much out the edge that I end up with a little pinner.
You're always going to have spillage, right? That's something I think people worry about a little too much when they're rolling joints, is the overflow of their cannabis falling out the end or whatever. But that's a byproduct of evening it out, right? Unless you're weighing everything out beforehand, and give you a little extra there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So as long as you're, weighing it out before, if you're weighing it out beforehand and you're measuring it in your joint as the paper's laid out, there's definitely ways to minimize the spillage for sure.
Like twisting the ends?
Yeah, there's people who twist the ends. They call that the boat method or whatever. I've always found that if we're going simplicity's sake, like, there's a bunch of different styles. There's straight joints, there's cone joints, there's cigar style with no filter where you roll the end and you poke it down, you cut it off, whatever, right?
That's how I do it.
As far as simplicity goes, I've always found that when I fold this, or before I even, put my product in, I try and make it even when I fold it with this line right here.
Okay.
Right? Without even folding it or without tying it or anything. That's where I hold it, right? I'll smooth it out a couple times. You can even, I've seen people fold it again right here instead of twisting it at the end and using the bow method, right? Just here.
See, okay. Here, now, this isn't bad. It's going to be a pinner. And I didn't use all of the weed on the plate, but someone once told me that it doesn't matter the size of the joint.
So, could I?
Yes, please.
Fix your issue?
What's my issue? The man's got me figured out already, folks.
Was the initial tuck.
Okay.
So, you ever use a joint roller, right?
Never used a joint roller.
No. So, basically what it does is it lines up the paper, and when you roll it back and forth, it rolls your cannabis into a cylinder, right?
Okay.
So you can mimic the same effect with the paper all the way through, right? If you start in the middle, bring the edges together.
But that's where the spillage happens for me. I start in the middle and I work my way to the ends, and so much spills out, I end up with a pregnant joint.
So, as you're going through, you can
tuck things back in.
Retuck things back in.
Okay.
Also, where the filter helps as well, if you decide to go with one, you roll it up beforehand, place that bad boy in the end, no spillage, and then you can roll around the filter.
Now, doesn't that make it difficult though to get that in, because it's pretty springy here?
Gotta break it down a little bit. These bad boys are malleable. You can bend them up a little. There's all different types of folding techniques for those.
While you're finishing that, let me ask you, have you what's the most complicated joint that you've ever tried rolling? You've ever tried rolling a cross joint or something fancy?
Most complicated joint I've tried rolling was a 20-gram joint. And it worked. It smoked. I won't say it did it well. And that was a long, long time ago.
For those of you at home, a 20-gram joint, that is 4 grams shy of a full ounce. What size paper did you use, or did you lick multiple papers together?
Yeah, it was, I want to say it was 4x5 king size, 4 wide, 5 deep. Yeah, it was rough.
How long did it take you before you finally said, let's just light this thing up?
Maybe an hour at least. Yeah. There had been some drinking involved beforehand too, so it was definitely like,
we can do this.
So it was, I don't think you could do that. I was like, I bet you I could try.
So when you were R&Ding, how much did you go into the background of the history of rolling papers?
Honestly, not as much as I did until after, because people started asking me, oh, well, you know, all these questions, and I felt like a fraud. You know, I love rolling joints. I love smoking joints. And I was like, you know, like I said, this was kind of a, you know, a harebrained idea that I was like, I'm just going to do it. And I've always been more of a, I'll do it and figure it out later kind of guy. And that's, you know, where I'm at. It's kind of where I'm at now. So as far as the history of rolling paper goes, I didn't really even have any knowledge on it until maybe 6 months in, as far as like how it dates back to, you know, 16th century Spain.
And school us a little bit, man.
So realistically, the Spanish and the French were the kings of rolling papers, right? Spaniards especially. That's where, like, still to this day, the oldest rolling paper factory in the world stands in Spain. It goes all the way back to like 700, I want to say, something close to that. But everywhere you go, there's somebody rolling something. You know, not every country in the world has the luxury of prepackaged cigarettes or prepackaged products like that, you know? So since basically the inception of smoking tobacco and cannabis,
that's how long rolling papers have been around.
Rolling papers have been around, you know? Now it started as banana leaves and stuff like that. People scooping off the, you know, the guts of inside of banana peels and drying those out. You know, there's all kinds of biodegradable plant material that people have been using since the dawn of time.
Why would you say smoking cannabis is better than, say, vaping cannabis?
I don't like the term just better. It's better for me because that's what I enjoy. That's where I get the most benefits from. And, you know, like I said, that's what I enjoy the most. To me, it's not just I'm smoking a joint. I enjoy the art of rolling a joint. What goes into making it burn evenly? What goes into the correct ash cycle and how you keep it from going out? You know, all the little stuff like that is, if that's what you mean by better, yes, because I'm interested in it more. You know, there's all these, you know, hash heads and all these guys who'll tell you, oh, why would I smoke flower when I can vape the best concentrates in the world? Well, that's what you like, you know, and that's the way I just really see it. So I think better is a relative term.
That's going to do it for another episode of The Feels. I'd like to thank our guest today, the owner of Handwraps Rolling Papers, Mr. Justin Bricker. I'd also like to thank all of you out there for watching and listening. I'm Jeff Rowse. We'll see you next time.